going to do is we're going to make a lap joint. So we're going to cut a half out of that end and half out of that and joint them together so they lap each other. So we'll end up with a T-shaped piece of wood. Right, so the next thing to do is to lay out the joint. I've actually marked already with a knife where I want the edge of the joint to come to. So I'm just going to put my knife in there and offer up the top piece to it and mark off on this side. I've got my mark there, and then I'll square it off. Where's my square? And I'm using a Japanese marking knife here. Like most marking knives, it's flat on one side. It's flat on one side and beveled on the other side. And you always want the flat side to be on the, or the beveled side rather, to be on the waist side. So this is our waist. So we're going to be cutting with a bevel on this side, but with a flat edge on this side, so that we'll end up with a nice flat edge on the joint. Right, I'm going to take those lines around with a pencil. You could use a knife, I prefer to use a pencil. A nice sharp H pencil. Right, we've got to do a similar thing on this piece. But we've got to remember, on this piece we're cutting away the top, where the face side is. On this piece we're going to be cutting away the underneath, other end, where the away from the face side. So if I offer this up on the nice squared end and knife it again there, and square it across. Whenever you're squaring, you're always using the square in relation to the your datum surfaces, so you always bear that in mind. You're never squaring from the other surfaces. So the stock is always against the datum surface. Right, and I'm just going to pencil those around. Now the reason we use a knife is because it's a lot more accurate. It gives you a more positive line to work to, and also later on we'll see that when we're pairing, the knife line is very important. Right, the next thing we need to do is work out how deep these laps are going to be. And they're going to be half the width of each piece. They're both the same width. So to find half, what I can do is take a guess at where halfway is with my marking gauge. This is a marking gauge with a stock, with a sliding stem on it, with a little pin that makes our mark. If I take a guess at where the middle is, then turn and make a point, and then turn it round, we can see we've got 2 points there. They're not quite meeting, so I've got to shift it along a bit. And then when we get to the point where, there we are, we're still not quite there, I've got to extend it a bit further. When we get to the point where the two pinholes line up, a bit more, we know we're halfway. Still not quite there. That's about right. See, the two pinholes are lining up now. Pass it a smidgen over. No, we'll be right there. We're going to mark the depth of the lap. One trick with the marking gauge is, if you mark like that, you can't actually see where to stop. So a good trick is to put a point there, and then when you mark along, it drops into the point and it stops in the right place. I've already done this side. Then also around here, again, in concentrating on having the stock of the gauge against your face side. So we mark all around there. I've already done this side actually. All around there. And again here we put a little point there. That will help us to stop in the right place. Right. It's also a good idea to mark the bits we're cutting off, so to save embarrassment later. So that bit's getting cut off there, and this bit's getting cut off here. Right, the next thing to do is to saw out the waist. we'll start by sawing the waste on this piece. Now I think in my video on sawing I showed you how to do this. So we've got these knife lines. That's partly why we use the knife. We're just cutting a bevel down to the line. Same on this side. So that gives us a good head start for sawing straight. So I'm not actually sawing all the way through. I don't need to use a bench hook. I can actually saw with it in the vise. Right. So, and you usually find that it's the first few strokes that define how good your cut is later on. So I'm just starting. I'm using my forefinger to guide the saw in, and I'm working my way back along that knife cut. And the bevel has helped the saw to sit into that knife cut. And now all I've got to do is concentrate on running to the pencil lines and stopping in the right place. And again on the other side. Right, I'm going to be taking this waste out, and to aid in chiselling it out, I'm going to just saw a few saw cuts in the waste area. One more. Right. The next thing to do will be to pare away the waste. To cut away the waste, we're going to use a paring chisel, very sharp paring chisel. I think initially I'm going to give it a few taps with a mallet just to get going. Oh, that was close. I think I'll work from the other side because the grain seems to be indicating that I need to do that. Up here. Can you see how where that bit came away, and it's only just stopped on the line, so I was lucky there. So what I'm doing is I'm working roughly to very close to that line. Now if I'd have put my chisel, if I'd left a lot more waste above that line and then put my chisel into it, what would have happened is the slope of the chisel would have pushed, the slope of the bevel of the chisel would have pushed it below the line we were working to. See, that's the gauge line there. Can you see what the chisel's sitting into? And I don't want to go below that line, so I'm just going to take a little bit more off above. And now I can just drop that chisel into that gauge line and just pare away, working up the hill. Take a little bit more away above the line there. And now drop the chisel into the line again. Can we get in there? Yeah, you can usually feel it sort of drop onto the line. Right. And we are down to the line on this side. Turn it round. Turn across. And then work down to the line on this side. And drop into the line. Right. quite sawn down to the line there. Now we're paring away, and we're paring uphill, so there should be a little hump in the middle. But as long as we're working to those lines we've established here, and we don't go below them, then we should be safe. So if we keep on pairing, and can you see how we're going up the slope there, and there's like a summit there, and we can work that summit further and further back towards the back line. You can see the summit is about there now. It's now about there. So what I'm going to do is turn it round. I have to come up this end again. And I'm just going to drop down to the line and take away the remains of that summit. I'm not going below that line. Clear away some of that bit there. I should be able to go straight across now. Check to see how flat it is. Pretty good. Something I did notice while I was doing this, if you get in close there, you can see a little bit of the knife line there, which would indicate possibly I didn't saw very well there, so I'm going to just take a little bit of that away. Right, so we've cut the lap in that piece. We're now going to cut the lap in the end. So I'm going to use a bigger saw for this. This is a short saw that's sharpened ripstar, so I can, because I'm cutting down the grain. So I'm going to start on the waist side of the line. So this is the waist. So I'm going to get the saw going first. And when we say sawing on the waist side of the line, this indicates what we mean. You can see the edge of the saw is running down the line, and any spare width of the kerf is on the waist side. And we want that edge of the saw to run down these two lines. I'm sawing diagonally. I'm sawing with the piece in the vise diagonally, because if I was to have it in the vise that way, I wouldn't be able to see what was happening down there when I'm sawing. If I have it in diagonally, I can see what's happening along here and along here, and then I'll turn it round and do it the other way, as you'll see in a minute. So I'm going to saw down to these, down the diagonals. Right, I'm corner to corner, turn it round, same again, can't see my gauge line. And then just saw out the middle bit. Being careful, if possible, not to saw where you want to. Right. Now we're going to do the same again. We're going to cut away this piece of waste, so I'm going to again go like that. I'd recommend you have a look at my sawing video to sort of clarify these points. Right, so if the cameraman can get out of the way, I'll saw off the waste. There's always a little bit left there you can never quite get at, so we take that off with a chisel. It's a joy using sharp tools. Right, so we've cut both parts of the joint. Now we come to the point where we see if it will fit. Well, possibly a little bit slacker than I'd like, but it's not too bad. You can see how that's going together. There's a little bit untidy there, and it's slightly proud there, so I think I could probably pare a little bit away there. Be a bit careful when you do this, else because you can end up taking too much off and spoiling the job. Better if you can get it right straight from the saw rather than paring, but that's the counsel of perfection. Yeah, that's not bad, and we're nice and flush all round now. Yeah. Now, lap joints